tell us about your delivery stories.
Okay. With our oldest daughter, I visited the doctor on a Monday. We had been living in Colorado at the time, and I flew back to Arizona to find housing for us for when school started again in the fall. And so I visited a doctor on a Monday, and he cleared me to fly back. He said everything was fine, but I woke up on Tuesday morning with a lot of fetal pressure, had maybe 4 contractions. And so instead of going to the airport, I went to the hospital. So I went with my mother because he was away. And we found that she was double footling breech with a bulging sac at 26 weeks. So they took her via emergency C-section, and she was admitted to the NICU. And the first time I saw her was right after the C-section. And I don't know, at what point did you get to where you could see her?
So from my perspective, every time I checked my voicemail in Colorado, she was further along until one of them said I had a baby girl, and then I tried to get an airline ticket, fly to Arizona, and when I saw her, I was very surprised to how small she was.
Yes. And she struggled quite a bit that first night. She was not doing very well, for sure.
So that's that.
Okay, and for our second child, we started contracting right at, it was like just before 26 weeks, like 25 and a half weeks. So I was admitted to the hospital and put on bed rest, and they were able to stop the labor. But after about a week, I started contracting again, and she came, and we had a McDonald's cerclage put in to try and prevent premature labor, but I contracted right through that and dilated, and they ended up delivering her vaginally, but when the doctor checked, when I started laboring, she was head down, but she flipped while I was contracting, and she came out breech. And so she was caught there for a moment, and then admitted to the NICU. So she was 2 pounds 1 ounce.
Yeah.
And she did quite well. And then for our 5th and 6th baby, they were mono twins, so monoamniotic, monochorionic twins. They share their placenta and their amniotic sac, which is very, very dangerous. And so I was admitted at 26 weeks for monitoring, and when we hit about 29 weeks, we kind of, with our doctors, decided it was probably time. I had been contracting on and off, and one of the baby's heart rates had been not performing as well in the scan, so we kind of decided as a mutual decision that it was time to deliver the babies. And you probably remember more of the delivery for them than I do.
It was a lot less chaotic. So they were bigger, right?
Yeah.
And they seemed a lot more stable at that size for us. Yeah.
Yeah. And with our last baby, it was a Sunday morning, and I laid down to take a nap, and when I woke up, I just had this thought that was, your water broke. And sure enough, after I walked into the bathroom, I realized that my water had broke. And so we went to the hospital as quick as we could, and they were able to, I didn't really even start contracting initially.
Right.
It wasn't until I'd been in the hospital for a little while that I started having contractions, and they were able to stop it. And then she waited, was it 11 days?
I think, yeah.
11 days without her amniotic fluid, and she came out and was born and sent to the NICU right away, and was struggling.
Yeah, I was here.
Yeah, but that was it.
All right, so now tell us a little bit more in detail about your NICU stay.
Okay. So with our oldest daughter, she was really having a hard time. That first night, they had to give her chest compressions to keep her heart going. She was not keeping up. for sure. And then by the time she was about just shy of 2 weeks old, they decided that her PDA was big enough that it was affecting her breathing, and so they went in and did her surgery to close the PDA. And after that, she made some good improvements, but she, as a result of the surgery, her diaphragm was nicked, and so she had diaphragm paralysis on the left side, and so she struggled to get off the ventilator. And she, how long was she? It was almost 2 months before she was really breathing on her own.
Yeah.
Before she could really move on to a CPAP. And but those were her main struggles while she was in NICU. We had a lot of apneas and bradycardias and a lot of feeding issues initially.
Yeah.
Specifically from his.
Yeah, I mean, she was very bruised too when we first, from the delivery. It wasn't.
She was wrapped up in her
It was a little bit
umbilical
of a
cord.
rough delivery. So.
Yeah, so she had begun to descend down the birth canal, so they had to pull her back out
Yeah.
because they were going to be a C-section, and so that's where some of the initial trauma came from.
Yep.
And
But-
she,
So she didn't develop any bleeds or anything.
yeah, nothing severe. She had like a stage 1 bleed and stage 1 retinopathy prematurity, but she didn't need treatment for any of those.
Yep.
And then she came home about 3 weeks before her due date. Is that
Mhm.
correct? So she was a 26-weeker, came home about 3 weeks before her due date, and she came home on oxygen and was on oxygen until she was about 8 months old, I want to say. Or maybe it was 6 for her.
Yeah.
And then our third daughter, she had a rougher course in the NICU. Initially she seemed great. She seemed like she wasn't going to have any of the problems that her older sister had. Her PDA closed with medication. She seemed like she was going to do great, but she developed a stage 3 to 4 bleed, which, as it healed, she developed hydrocephalus. So she, we lived in Arizona at the time, and she was helicoptered to a hospital about 2 hours away from our home.
From Tucson, Arizona to Phoenix,
Yes.
Arizona.
And, and she was about a month old when she had her first shunt put in. She had a subphaleal shunt put in her reservoir with a little pocket of skin loosened on her scalp so that it could rig out the fluid. And she did well with that.
Yeah.
She, for the most part in the NICU, she still had some of the normal developmental things to go through, like apneas and bradycardias and learning how to eat and keep her body warm. She had all that she struggled with, and in the end, we ended up going to try and feed her almost every feeding because we rented an apartment and we're close enough to her that we could go and be with her quite a bit at the last bit of her hospital stay. And then she came home and had her shunt converted when she was 8 months old to a VP shunt. And then she needed it replaced again one more time. But since then, she has some mild cerebral palsy and some learning disabilities. She struggles a little with school, but she is a very happy and determined girl who is able to, despite of it all, to do well.
Oh, that's good.
She's healthy and she's happy. And with our twins, the old twin A, she only spent 24 hours on the ventilator. In fact, I never even saw her intubated because I was not able to go see her yet. So I wasn't well enough to get up and go to the NICU. Her twin B spent about 3 weeks on the ventilator and then switched to a CPAP. And I want to say twin A was on a CPAP even only for 3 weeks. She seemed to have had a relatively smooth NICU course, especially compared to some of our other babies. She just was there and floated along and did just fine. And then twin B had a little bit more breathing difficulties and needed a hernia surgery. And they both developed pretty severe reflux though, which kept them in the hospital longer than we anticipated there at the end, because they would keep dropping their oxygen saturations and having little Brady's every time they ate.
Yeah.
At the end for about, it was like 3 weeks before they finally, we got off oxygen and we were still waiting for the reflux. And then they finally came home, and both have done well
Yep.
so far, both of them. And then our littlest one, I feel like I'm doing all the talking.
You're really good at it.
Do you want to share? How big you're doing?
Sure, I guess I can share. So for our littlest one, she was here, and you know, when she was first admitted to the NICU, she was definitely having the hardest time, I think, of all of ours. And she was struggling, and they couldn't figure out initially what was causing her elevated stress, but she wasn't responding well. So after some digging and ruling out, you know, various things, they decided, you know, that I guess they focused on her head, and she had 2 grade 3 bleeds. And so that was a primary concern for a while. She picked up, seemed to pick up pretty well after it was like maybe day 3 or 4. And despite the bleeds, they seemed to resolve by themselves this time, and hydrocephalus did not, you know, start like they had with our earliest daughter. And so I think that's probably the biggest struggle she had, other than the typical, I guess, apnea and bradycardia, until she was mature enough to stop doing that.
To bring that
Yeah.
out.
Trying to think. Yeah, that's. Can you think of anything else major she had other than that?
She had this C-cam.
That
She had a little
they thought
air
she had a
bubble.
C-cam for a while, but after several weeks, it was not there, I guess.
No, so that was
So that
that made us happy.
Yeah.
What's a CCAM?
It is like a little pocket
Of
The-
air near the. So the lung, I guess, has a couple cavities on it, and normally would only have one.
Yes.
And they can see it, you know, as a little bubble. They describe it as kind of a bubble on top of the lung. Either that or a tiny hole in her lungs that was causing a little air pocket, and they could see it through X-rays. And that, for some reason, resolved itself. So
Yes.
the doctor
Which
said
so
it
they-
probably
they-
wasn't a C-cam because they don't get better, so it may have been the pocket bear.
Yes, it's so.
So.
All right, so let's talk about taking them home and challenges once you're home.
I think with our oldest, that was probably our most scary time
Yeah.
to bring baby home. And she came home on oxygen and on an apnea monitor. And she was not a very good sleeper. So I can remember that she would wake up crying and wake up crying. And I think the biggest struggle when you get home is how much you worry if they're getting enough to eat. I think that is one of the biggest struggles at first, is learning how to balance their needs with what you feel like is right for them. And I feel like that's kind of a big one. But
And she had the, what was the little thing that went around her chest?
The
For
apnea monitor,
yeah.
yeah, she did.
So that was fun.
yeah, so that would go off, but usually it was nothing. And
Yeah.
I think so when you get them home, it's about, I think it just takes a few days to get used to realizing that, okay, at this point, I'm the one who's in charge, and I know what's best for my baby, and to realize that you don't need to rely on somebody else to tell you how to take care of your baby. And it takes, it's like any other experience of bringing a full-term baby home even. It takes a month or two before you've really settled in, and I think that's just part of it and how it goes. And I think the challenge with preemies too is quite often they see a lot more specialists, so you're going to the doctor more. And you have things like my older two, we had oxygen tanks. We had a lot to carry when we went anywhere. And so I think it's learning how to balance all of everything, and how to, I think a lot of times as a parent of a preemie, you kind of feel like you're the one who sees the whole big picture, and you take all the babies, you take them to all these specialists, and you see different people for different aspects, but as their parent, you're the one who knows your child the best and understands their needs. And the more As, you know, those first couple days can be a little bit scary, but once you get to know your baby, you get to where you really fulfill the role of mom and the love and the joy that comes with that.
I think for me, because of the apnea spells they would have, I seem to drift apart. It took a while for me to let them, to not check on them all night long. If they made any noises or whatever, I was immediately saying, are they still breathing? Because that is just a constant fear, I think, after having been in the hospital and watched them maybe go blue a couple times when you're feeding them. So.
I think we've kept the babies in our room a lot longer, our preemie babies, than we have our term ones, just for that reason, because you're getting up to check on them so much more often.
So I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's probably.
And challenges after you're home and you're settled, what things did you see over those first months, years?
I think a lot of it, the challenge, especially with our second daughter, are realizing that not everything is a medical reason. Sometimes your baby's just crying because they are sad or they just want to be held, and that's okay. And I think it's okay to even nurture your baby and hold them as much as they want to be held, and I think that's okay. But I think, like with our third baby, she did have a lot more medical issues, and it's okay to go with your instincts. If you feel like something's wrong, take them to the doctor. We had experiences where we kept insisting something was wrong, and we were told she was fine, and finally went and saw somebody else, and something was very, very wrong. So it is okay to be, to go with those instincts, because you know your baby, and you're going to know those shifts and those mood changes that your baby has, especially after, like I said, you get to know them real well, and if you've been with them in the NICU, you've already had a chance there to kind of know their personality and see what they're like, and so you'll be able to know and trust your instincts. And I think, there's a lot of challenges. There's developmental delays, which can be hard and scary at first, but I think if you learn to love your baby and accept them for who they are and not try and compare them, because they're preemies, their life is going to be just a little different, especially at first. It's okay to just rejoice in the milestones that they make and realize they'll progress when they are ready, not when you want them to, because that's just not how it works.
Yeah. Also, our babies were all small, and so you have to decide if you're gonna tell people how old they are or get out of the store quickly, because as soon as you tell them their real age, it turns into a long story. So we just typically lie, and if we're paying attention to what others, if she says the wrong thing and we both say the wrong age, then we look bad. But you
it's happened before, where we told a baby somebody our baby was 2 ages. We're like, yeah. No, even the other day we told someone our baby was a little bit younger than she is. It's sometimes easier than needing to reopen that NICU wound every time you talk to somebody. I think that's something that only preemie parents understand.
So let's talk about what you wish you had known. Like the first time you had a preemie, what do you wish you had known?
I think the big thing for me is realizing that a lot of those things your baby goes through, like struggling to breathe at first and struggling to keep their body warm and struggling to learn how to eat, are developmental. It's the same as a baby learning to crawl or walk. They can't do those things before they are developmentally ready. And so I think that was a big thing for me, was to realize that it's okay if they're not doing that when I thought they should, because you can't put restrictions or deadlines on a person and their ability to learn. Babies are the same way. And I think that was a big thing I wish I would have realized at first, is that while it was really scary to watch, it was normal and appropriate for my preemie baby to act that way. I think that was a big thing for me. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I'd never seen a baby that small, and so I think initially people gave me updates and things, and I just didn't realize, like, what, for the normal case of a 26-weeker, how likely is this baby to live? Because when I saw the baby, I thought, wow, that's really small, and it took me, I think, some time as I settled into the NICU to realize that there's the 26-weeker, and then there's lots of complications, but statistically a lot of them do well. It's a rough ride most of the time, but they come out okay a lot of the time. And it was just